This episode of the Better To podcast is brought to you by Kitty Mystic and DM Needom, author of the Better To Burnout series, which includes her latest releases of Fairy Tales and I Love You and Is Love Just Another High. Hey gang, Donna here. Thanks for tuning in to the Better To podcast. Today's guest is Tammy J. Cohen, and she wrote a book called Text Messages to My Son. She talks about the fact that she was going through a time where her sons and her were just not communicating. And she wanted to, when she would send text messages, it was usually something critical. And she realized that she wanted a better relationship with them. So she decided to start texting them and not texting them the critical stuff, but texting them the positive stuff. So tune in. Hi, Tammy. How are you?
Hi, Joanna. How are you? I'm fine.
I'm good. I'm good. So you wrote a book called Text Messages to My Son. And, you know, for me, when I was a stepmom, we didn't have text. So I didn't have to deal with that. So, I mean, I would say technology as much as is it a blessing, it's also kind of changed the dynamics of everything.
100%. One of the reasons text messages to my sons started was because I realized that my sons don't want to sit and have a conversation with me. As a matter of fact, I'm from a generation where you spoke in person, you got together, you had a conversation, and that's just not where it's at. So when I wanted to communicate with my kids, I realized the best way to do it was to text a message because they were looking at their phones continuously, like everybody is looking now at their phones continuously. And I thought, what better way to send the messages of love, inspiration, support, positivity, and share what I was learning and share anything with them. What a better positive effect than, sending the usual messages in the past, which were more of a reprimand or a reminder. So that's how text messages to my sons was born, by gathering all those positive text messages up and putting them into the book.
Well, and it's something that they can look back on and with fond memories, hopefully. I mean, when you think about, because I'm Gen X, and yeah, we did have family time, we did have family dinners, but let's be honest here. Were there times when your parents were talking to you that you just tuned out anyway? You just were like,
Oh
okay.
yeah. When I look at my kid's face and my husband too, when I start talking, they kind of go slack and a little blank, and I'm just like, that's nice. But when I want to, like, a lot of times when I would write a message, they would respond. So I noticed with text messages to my sons, and they were responding with a heart emoji. They were responding with, "That's a good message," or they were just responding, "Love you," and that was fine because it was a response.
And that's the thing, you're trying to get engagement, because otherwise you're not. And I think that's, we have the prevalence of the rise of ADHD now, and I'm not saying that it's not real, but nobody looks at this question: is the rise of ADHD because we do have that phone in our hand all the time? Is it because that we
Yeah.
had those little attentions, something to distract us? Even when we're watching a movie, oh, we can sit here and doom scroll. I've done it. I'm guilty. I'm not going to say I'm not. Oh, I don't do that. I've done it, and I do it a lot. My late husband would get after me and say, "Are you watching the movie?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah," and I could tell him exactly what's going on. He's like, "How do you do that?" Because some of us are wired that way, but were we always wired this way? That's the bigger question here.
No, ancient man wasn't wired this way, and we're designed to be, we're designed to heal ourselves, to do a lot of really cool things. I think a lot of the rise of ADHD is because of the environment, not just the phones, because of the foods that kids are served and the toxins and the pollutants that are out there. I think the whole point of phones and devices is that they feed into it, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
giving it to you immediately. You don't have to go looking for it. It's in your hand. So it just adds to it. So one of the things that I thought about with, text message to my sons was adding that tagline, connecting deeply in an age of devices. Because let's face it, devices to me are they're kind of there. They're neutral. They're not good. They're not evil. They're just a means to get information out. So why not use it for something positive? Because we all know how much hatred is also going out in messaging, and how much that's available to you all the time. So I feel like if you do more of the opposite, if you start with your messaging your kids and then you message your loved ones, you message family, you message your community, and you keep doing it continuously, because I do it daily, you can make a difference. You can bring more light out there, and we need it desperately.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's when you look at media, and I think We Didn't Start the Fire by Billy Joel, if I'm not mistaken, and this is going back, if I'm not mistaken, the video had a video screen inside showing you all these bad, terrible things. And if you choose to sit there and fill your phone, fill your TV, fill your mind with constant negative things, you're going to be drawn to that. I actually had a healer on a couple of seasons ago, and he talked about if we actually all focused on something positive, everybody in the world for like 10 minutes a day, we could change how we are operating as a society globally.
I agree 100%. It's really scary, the level of indoctrination and incitement that can come out of a device. It's
Mm-hmm.
unbelievable. But, it's funny because people are getting, messaging me about the book, and they're saying, I'm reading text messages to my sons, and these messages, it's amazing. I'm taking it with me everywhere. I'm reading the messages. I feel really good. And I'm excited about it, and I can't, this is amazing, so inspirational. And what we also did with Inside is, after every chapter, at the end of every chapter, there are lines where we say, your turn, write a message. So people start practicing and writing it and getting an idea of messages. Sometimes you look at your phone and you want to send a positive message and you're kind of blank. You're like, where do I start? What do I talk about?
Uh-huh.
What should I talk about? What should I say to my kids? What should I say to I don't know. What should I say to anybody? But like once you start seeing them and you get it kind of catches on, and then you're like, oh, I can do this, and I'm fine. You could take the messages right out of the book. I'm fine with that, as long as you have that positivity that you can share.
For me, I mean, text messaging, that's the only relationship I have with my father. And it's not because, I mean, he lives in New Orleans and I live in the Chicago area. And the fact of the matter is, he lost his hearing.
Wow.
So, and he did not text before. He was not a texter. He doesn't, texting was not something he was going to do. And that's the only relationship we have now because he has tinnitus so bad he doesn't talk on the phone. He doesn't talk to anybody really because he can't stand what's going on in his head. So he'll text. But I do know a tell because I asked him something. I asked him something direct. He's like, yeah, I'll answer it. I said, okay. And we were having these lengthy conversations. And all of a sudden, when I asked him the question, he was just like, no, and no, and I got to go. It was like, uh-huh. So even though sometimes you can lose that inflection in a text message, there's also those times when you're like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're doing. You're lying, but that's okay.
Exactly,
you're
exactly.
you're avoiding. And I mean, you can tell sometimes, I think when you look back at the days of, oh boy, AOL and messaging on AOL, sometimes things get lost in translation in messaging because there isn't the emotion. But if you can
Absolutely.
craft a message to put that emotion in, which goes back to the skill of writing, you can convey something, you can convey that emotion, and it does come across as real.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yes, there are times that I've seen it in email and text where it's not understood. Like, and even you can't tell a person's tone. You can't tell if they're kidding. You can't tell if they're actually joking around, or having just they're loving you. You can't. Sometimes it's hard to tell, especially if something's sarcastic. You just can't tell. So people can get offended. But when you're what I you know what I do, and especially in the book, when you look at text messages to my son, there are emojis in there. Now we don't cover it up with emojis. Basically, it's good morning sunshine, and there's a sunshine, and at the end of the text, there's how much I love them. I let them know, and I put the heart. And I find with any message, if I want to soften it up 100%, so the person knows it's all good, I send like lovey kind of little emojis, so they know it's
Mm-hmm.
not a rubber man. I'm not picking on them. I'm not judging. I'm not doing anything. Like I'm actually not coming from a bad place. It's coming with love. So yeah, so I've realized that there are ways you can soften it a bit. But listen, there's nothing like in person. Even when a person wants to avoid the conversation, there's so many tells that they're avoidance, and you could stay on top of it. Whereas you're right, on the phone they could just bye. I'm
Yeah.
not looking at my phone anymore. You're gone. That's it.
we're tuned out. I laughed the other day because somebody posted a joke about how people text message GM. And I have a friend who I talk with, and she'll text GM, and somebody's like, it's General Motors. It's but and I mean, my pen name is DM, and I didn't really
Oh
think
yeah.
about it. I mean, it's my given name, but I didn't think about it. It's like, oh, so I'm direct message. That's good. That's really, really good.
Well,
But
I
you
got
don't
to tell
think
you
it's personal.
something funny. The first when texting, I started texting with my kids. I mean, it was years ago because that's when text messaging came about, like in the early 2000s, right? Something like that. And I didn't understand the abbreviations. I didn't understand. I didn't know what it meant. I was like, what is BTW? Like, what is GR8? Like, what does that mean? I don't, can you explain this to me? It was like a completely different language. It took me a little while to get hip to it. And now it's funny because in text messages to my sons, my messages are on the longer side. And even my kids now say, they'll go, that was a great message. It's long. They don't even want to read anything that's a little deep or long. They really don't. They do, but because it's like kind of I want to know where this is going. But yeah, they want it short, the message on top of that. And
And,
I don't work that way.
well, and the harder thing is, I mean, going back to the early 2000s with texting and messaging and everything, when somebody, when they would just drop off, they would just disappear. You're in the middle of a conversation, you think it's going fine, and then no goodbye, nothing. And it's just like, did I say something wrong? What happened? But I
Cricket.
mean, now it's like, now you understand. It's like, okay, yeah, the conversation just naturally ended because they're done. But it's taken a while for, some of us to get to that point where it's like, okay, it's not personal. It's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the evolution of texting, I mean, we're going to continue to see that. And we're going to continue to see, I would say, short messages via video. I mean, have you guys
Mm-hmm.
video texted messages to each other?
No, I've spent so much time writing text messages to my sons because it's just like a compilation of so many of the several years of texting. But I haven't tried the video. There's something about writing. For me, maybe it's a generation I'm from. It's very cathartic, and as the words leave you, it's I don't know, you feel like your heart's more in it. I mean, I saw with the new updates on Apple, like the oh, send a video message, send it, do more of that. And I guess it is a natural evolution, but I don't know, there's something about writing a word, and putting that down on a paper or the text, typing it out and it just touches me on a different level. And I think people want to go back to earlier times in a lot of ways, and when things were maybe simpler, when things were people were more connected. Maybe they wrote each other letters or they did things because people are feeling less connected, and that's why I wanted to really write text messages to my sons and put it out there. I didn't need to necessarily do it. When I told people what I was doing, they're like, you should put that into a book. So that's how text messages came to be about, because people are looking to connect. They are looking for a purpose. They are looking for something more. And I think we are hearkening back to days where, it was more innocent, maybe sweeter, maybe there were people cared about each other and they expressed it more. Families lived closer to each other. Families were together. I think there's some of that going on too.
I think it's also less stressful. I mean, before, you could I'm going out to dinner. I'm going to go. Nobody's going to bother me. I'm not going to be sitting at the table being distracted. I'm going to be there with the person I'm with. I want to make plans with my friends. I call, they're not there. I can drive by their house, sure. But if they're not there, they're not there. I'm not hunting them down. So there was not as much stress. I mean, the boss can reach out to you now and say, hey, can you come in? There's so many little things. And as far as the letters, something amazing that I found when my in-laws passed is there were letters. My mother-in-law's sister had dated a test pilot in World War II. And my mother-in-law actually had a thing for him, even though it was his sister, the sister's boyfriend. Anyway, they broke up, and my mother-in-law kept all the letters.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's an amazing gift to have these letters. And I've thought about putting them in a book because this is a time that was tough. And you still have this person who's writing these love letters that are just, you don't get that now. You may get a text message that somebody loves you or cares about you, but even that is not what it used to be.
Yeah, that's very true, and that's why really, I don't just send like the one liner. Oh, I love you.
Hmm.
Have a nice day. You're blessed. That's why I actually, and you'll, if you look into the text messages to my sons, if you look in the book, I mean, it's 10 chapters. Every chapter has a category name. So there's mindfulness and gratitude, there's leadership and focus, there's family and love. And all the messages that apply to that topic are in that chapter. And every message is lines, like several lines, because I didn't want it to be a one and done. I wanted it to be impactful because one day they will look back on these. They will look back on the book. They'll open up text message to my sons. They each have it. People have it, and it's there. It's physical, and you could go and look and read poetry. As far as I'm concerned, it's texting poetry.
What did your kids think when you decided, hey, I'm turning this into a book?
Well, they actually thought it was really cool, and they wrote the forward.
Okay.
So my sons actually wanted to write the forward. I wrote an introduction, of course, of why am I doing this? Where did this come about? But my sons wrote the forward to text messages to my sons, and they wrote what it means to them to get the message and how that they're proud that I did this. And it means a lot to them and how they feel when they get that message. Because Joanna, when you're getting every morning a message that you're extraordinary, you're special, oh, some inspirational quote, some knowledge, you're told you're loved. You know somebody loves you. You start your day off with that kind of a positive energy, right? Your day can get tough, but you're kind of bulletproof because you have that foundation every day. You know somebody cares. You know somebody's telling you that you're worthy. So I think it goes way further. And even though I have boys, I think it applies to any relationship you want to have, friends, what have you. I think people want to know that somebody cares about them and somebody is making the time to make them feel special. I think it's endearing, actually, that people, that when you receive a nice message from somebody, it's endearing. It changes your whole vibration for the day.
Oh, it does. And I mean, the thing is, if without those messages, I mean, when I lost my husband, it was during COVID. So we had a lot of lockdown
Sorry,
still.
by the
That's
way.
it wasn't COVID, it was something else, but still it was just a whole you didn't have the normal grieving process. But my friends, whether it be by phone or there was a couple I actually went and saw, but I had friends that were out of state that would message me every day to check in to make sure I'm okay. And sometimes would say, hey, can you send me a picture? I just want to check you out. And it's just those things at the time helped me get through it because it made me know that I wasn't alone.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest thing. We don't always check in. And if you can check in with somebody, especially, if they're having a hard time, maybe they lash out at you, but sometimes you need to be able to say, hey, what's going on? Because sometimes that is not about you, it's about them.
Yeah, and you know how people, I mean, let's face it, we all wear masks. We'll walk around and smile, and you don't really know what's going on behind the mask. And one of the things that's why when, with this book, with text messages to my sons, I write in on the cover, it says connecting deep. I think having connections that are positive or, getting to that point, it makes all the difference between how your day is going to go. Not just your day, I think your life. I think if more kids had these positive things going on in their lives, I think they would turn out way better. I don't think they'd be susceptible to a lot of the harmful things and harmful messages that are out there as well.
Well, something there was a guest I interviewed quite a while ago, and he wanted the perfect Facebook picture. He's in Australia. He wanted the perfect Facebook picture, and so he thought that would change his life if he got that. I think he was about 12 or 13 at the time, so he got it. He got the picture, and he thought it was going to be life changing, and it wasn't. And so he had a propensity of sneaking out of his parents' garage and just going off. And he would always leave the window open. And he said the final night that he decided, he went out the window and he shut it and he climbed up on a department store roof and he jumped
Uh,
and he ended up being paralyzed from the waist down. Now it was a hard lesson for him, but now he has turned his life around and he goes and reaches out to other kids and parents to say, hey, look, you have to see what's going on. You have to be there for them. You don't want to end up like me, even though I've overcome this and he's almost to the point where he can walk again with assistance, but that's still an issue for him. So it's like he has learned this hard lesson because he felt isolated. He felt alone. He felt that, and that's the thing. If parents in our society doesn't allow parents necessarily to always be there to check in because they have to do their own thing. They have their own job, sometimes two jobs. And that's the sad thing is that sometimes these kids don't necessarily have that person being able to text because they are so wrapped up in their own problems and drama. I mean, and I can go back to a moment before we had all this technology of coming home. We had moved schools or moved and I changed schools and I was suddenly from an all girl school into a co-ed school and I'm wearing hand-me-downs and I have acne and I'm just not fitting in and I don't know how to do this. And I go to my mom and I'm crying and she just looks at me. She goes, I have my own problems to deal with yourself. Closes the door. Okay. Of course, that wasn't good, but this is now impacted much differently because we have people that are working two jobs. And how can they be there for their kids? Yes, they can send a text message, but there's always that intention of I'm going to do this and I don't because it gets past me. So how do you recommend to somebody who they know they want their kids having a problem, but they don't necessarily know how to deal with their kids' problem because they have their own shit. Sorry.
Well, that's a really good point, Joanna. That's really, that's definitely what a lot of times what's going on, and people's lives are very busy and they're dealing with their own stuff. But okay, in text messages to my sons, one of the things I made sure to do when I text my sons, first of all, I make sure to put the time to do it. You have to be consistent. You have to make an effort. This is your child. This is your loved one. If they matter to you, you will make the time to do it. Just like you make the time to exercise, take 5 minutes less exercising and send a text. That's my attitude. But to be honest with you, I share a lot in the messages of my mistakes, where I ask for them for forgiveness because I know I didn't act right. I know I didn't handle something well with them. I'll go back in time and I'll say, that I could have done this better. And I try to explain my origin story to them of why I might have reacted a certain way. And I think having an honest, where you could be honest with your kids and you're not looking at it like, listen to me, do what I'm telling you, this is what you have to do. But it's more like, I might have made mistakes with you and this, I didn't know better. And now I'm learning so much more. They look at you differently. They're willing to open up a little bit. I have a very dear friend who she said, she was having a lot of issues with a 14-year-old. And basically, she started doing the texting. And she said the relationship changed because her daughter really liked that kind of where her mother was reaching out, where her mother was taking the time to, share, share, share with your kids. You're not perfect. And the more that they know and you share about yourself, the more that they see you're human, they can find a way to even connect back to you. And that's what the book, Text Message to My Sons really is about, human connection. I'm human, you're excellent. I'm a work in progress. Whatever happened or whatever messaging that you got that wasn't great, it wasn't your fault, it's me.
Well,
And I think being able to say that means a lot for a kid.
it does because I think our generation, because I assume you're around my age too, our generation was taught to, and even the boomers, they were taught to, well, this is the way it is. I am God, basically. You listen to me, or it's my way or the highway. You're in trouble. And the fact is, it's like as you get older, you start looking at your parents as, well, they're not perfect. They were not God. They were not whoever they thought they were. And the truth is, they're flawed. And then you have to stop and go, wait a second. Well, where did that flaw start? My grandparents are not the same people that raised them. My grandparents are different people. And this came to light very true recently because there was a story that came up about my grandfather. And my grandfather was somebody who would wait at the mall for my grandmother. She couldn't drive, so he would take her everywhere. He would garden, he would do all these wonderful things. If he smoked outside the house because of her asthma. Very considerate, very loving. And I knew he was a boxer. I had heard stories he was a boxer. The thing I didn't hear until recently was that, well, he used to take my dad and uncle. Well, they grew up in New Orleans, and this happened to me too. He would take them to the bar. Okay, so I understand that mentality. It happened to me. And then he would bet, and then he would get in fist fights that would get bloody. And I'm sitting there going, what? What? But this is what I'm getting at. So it made me look at him a little differently, which then in turns makes me look at my dad differently. And I think that's the thing. We don't look at those past people because your parents as grandparents are not the people that raised you. And
No,
and I mean that's
absolutely
we
not.
we never
Hey, you
look at
know what?
that.
Being a grandparent is so much better than being a parent. And I haven't met a grandparent who has said, I wish I had was a grandparent first. It's great. Raising kids is hard, you know?
It is. It is, especially when you don't know what's going to happen and you want to protect them, but then again, you have to let them fly and soar. You have to let them have their own experiences.
Yeah, one of the messages I remember that I wrote to my kids in the book and text messages to my sons is that, you know, I you don't you didn't come with a manual that if this happens, this is the right way to handle it. There isn't a parent, that really I didn't never went into it trying to intentionally hurt you or trying to do the wrong thing. I did the best I could but it and if it was wrong, it wasn't your fault. I just didn't know any other way because we're not prepared.
No,
Even if you think you've read every book, and believe me, every book out there about kids in the first year, if you read them, they'll make you crazy because your kid, your kid isn't doing the milestones that they're talking about, and everybody develops differently, and I didn't even realize this. There's something wrong. There's always something wrong. So yeah, I spent a lot of messages explaining where I came from and limiting beliefs and things that I carried around for a long time and sharing it with them because not because I felt like it made me look less, but because I felt that it made them understand and want that deeper relationship with me because they see me as a human being, not just as their mom who they love, as a human, as another person who's trying. You just have to try. You have to try. That's important.
well, I think parenting for us, meaning our parents to us, it was also very much we don't want to pull back the curtain. We don't want you to see Oz.
Mhm.
We don't want you to see what's really going on. We don't want you to think that there's problems. And if there are problems and you see them, well, you don't get involved. You just have to go through it and deal. You don't know what's on. You're just being pulled along a roller coaster. Where I think parenting more nowadays, I think parents are a little bit more aware and they are giving more information. At least I think that's the way it is. I don't know because I'm not a parent anymore.
That's a good question. Like I'm married, right? And my husband's a completely different culture than me. And we have very different parenting styles. And he's more of the don't say anything, don't they should, keep it, don't share, don't this. And I'm the opposite. And my one of my sons said to me, you just share too much. And I was like, you're such a guy. But at the end of the day, you know what? I don't feel that you should back away and hide things.
No.
Kids, when they find out, because they're going to find out at some point. And where did it get you?
Well,
Be honest. And everything's a learning experience. Everything.
I do appreciate because I come from, my parents divorced. And the funny thing is, I knew before they ever had a fight in front of me. It was like the year before, I'm like, you guys need to go to Disney World. They're like, what? Because we were all supposed to go as a family. I'm like, no, you need to go by yourself. I'm like 7 years old. Just go by yourself. You need time alone. And they're like, what? I'm like, you need time alone. Why would a kid say this? I don't know. Next year, there had a big blowout. Dad's gone, whatever. So I saw all that. So intuitively, I already knew something was brewing. But the interesting thing is, mom proceeded to tell me her story consistently about why they split up. And of course, she painted herself a certain way. So I remember asking my dad, I guess I was about 9 or 10. And I said, Dad, so what happened between you and your mom? You and mom. I'll tell you when you're older. Okay. So I hit 15. Dad, what happened? I'll tell you when you're older. So about 40, I sat down with him and I said, Dad, I think I'm old enough to hear your version now. And he did tell me. So it was just like, but I respected him in a way. I mean, as an adult, when I look back, I respect that he didn't say anything because it didn't sway me. Where my mom, her story was trying to sway me. So, there's a lot of dynamics there when it is something that is so sensitive. But if you're going through a tough time and your kid is begging you for something and you can't financially afford it, you need to be honest as to why, because otherwise it doesn't come across right and they don't get it.
Yeah, people are always like, they don't tell their kids anything. They don't tell their situation. They don't say anything. They want to spare their children. They don't want to upset their kids. They don't want their kids to be upset. But I don't know. I come from a divorced home also. My parents had a really nasty divorce. And it was hell. And it really affected the way I look at everything. I mean, but everything was about, going forward, relationships, everything. And also my parenting style affected. So I wanted my kids to understand that part of it, like the divorce and what it did. And I also wanted to reassure them that, I didn't have the reinsurance that everything's going to be fine. You're going to be okay. You're, I love, you're loved through this process. I didn't have any of that.
Right.
So I think as parents, I mean, whatever we go through, we have to try to do better. My like text message to my sons is not do this or do that. It's just a guide, a guide of a way to do something, a way to try to connect to your children or connect to a loved one, a way to explain things, a way to share. I share information. I've learned a lot. I've read a lot over the last couple of years, especially to better myself because I wasn't happy with who I was. I'm going to be honest with you, Joanna. I had a lot of stuff in my head, and I wanted to work on myself. So I was sharing the journey. I was sharing everything I was learning, and it was nice. It was nice to do that, and it was nice to do with my kids who became very receptive to it because they found it interesting. So yeah, so I think that it's up to us. Doesn't matter which. It's up to somebody to take the first step.
Well, and I
That,
agree.
that
And you're talking about coming from a nasty divorce, and the fact of the matter is, I think especially when it was a nasty divorce, and it back in the day, people when they divorced, they did not try to think of the kids and make it a working co-parent relationship. It
right.
was, and then you get the Snyder marks from the parents saying one or the other, you remind me just of your mother. You remind me just like your father. It's like, so are you putting your animosity about them onto me and then kind of bailing? I mean, that's the thing. It's like you have to. Recently I read a book about emotionally unavailable parents, and it's very enlightening. And it's very enlightening, and it talks about the fact that sometimes our parents are so wrapped up, especially the older generations, in these little mantras that they don't know how to parent because they were never parented. So you have to relearn how to take care of yourself. And that goes back to what you're saying about those positive messages. If giving your son those positive messages, that reinforces that where you didn't necessarily have that. You woke up, you didn't know what's going on. And it's like, okay. And right out the door, they're on you about something and you just got to go with it. And if the day turns into total problem, then it turns into a total problem and you're dealing with it by yourself because you don't have anybody there that's going to say it's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's 100% true. That's why I made a point of writing text messages and getting it out there to my sons because let me tell you something. I grew up, it was like trauma. My
Mm-hmm.
father was a Holocaust survivor. So there was a whole bunch of studies about that, the trauma of
Yeah.
that it's transmitted. And my mother was not a happy person. So there was a lot of trauma and there was a lot of craziness going on in the house. And I honestly felt like I walked on eggshells and I was stressed out as a very young. I remember
Mm-hmm.
it being like that. And I carried it over. I wound up getting type 1 diabetes and all kinds of stuff because of the stress. And I realized that at some point, thank God I woke up, wasn't that long ago. I was walking around as a victim and as, with all this anger and all kinds of things. and I didn't realize it. And I didn't feel good. I didn't feel right. I felt like there was something wrong, and I just was very down a lot. I functioned. I was working. Having a career, but I wasn't. There was something off when the pandemic hit. And I'm not saying it was a blessing because it wasn't a blessing at all.
It wasn't,
But
it wasn't. I get it.
I was able to just stop, and I was able to, because you couldn't do it. You had to shut down. It wasn't like I was traveling every other week for work. So I had to stay home and I had to like face myself. And I said, you know what? I got to do it differently. It's never too late. It's never too late to tell your kids how important they are, how much you love them. It's never important to let your community know that they matter. It's never too late to listen to somebody who's having an issue and try to give them some light. You know, I have a women's business network that I founded called Women Beyond the Table. And a lot of the women, a lot of it is this community of inspiration. We just like make each other, we listen and we support each other, and we just send each other love, okay? And say, I can help you, I can get an answer for you. This is what people want. And if you could start with the kids, they'll do it for their children, they'll do it for their friends, they'll do it in their community, because it's all energy. So text messages, my book is really, for me, it's a positive energy book, because if you put it out there, you attract it.
Right.
And you just change the vibration of everything around you. And
Right.
that's all we can do, because what else is really there to do? It doesn't cost anything to send a positive message. It doesn't cost anything to say, I love you, and text. You have your phone. You have part of your phone plan. You can send a text like, how are you doing? Are you okay? I'm here for you. That means a lot to people, by
It's
the
not
way.
like the early 20s when it was 10 cents a message or whatever it was.
Right?
Yeah.
We had these crazy phone bills because you were on the phone for an hour, but
Yeah.
like, no, seriously, you can do it. And anybody who says they don't have the time is full of shit. Sorry for cursing.
I honestly, I only stopped for myself from cursing because I didn't know how you felt. I'm very, my books have curse words. I curse. Yes. I have a potty mouth occasionally. I do admit that. But that's the thing. I think you have to make the time. And we try to, we try not to do the hard things a lot of the times as people. We try to, even though we may want to say something, we're not sure how it's going to be received, so we don't say it. Or we don't do something because, well, they may take it the wrong way. Well, if it's nice, what does it really matter? It might brighten up somebody's day. There's the whole thing of, well, you shouldn't compliment a woman about her dress or the way she looks. But then again, hearing it might make you feel good. That might make
Right.
that person feel wonderful. They may be having a crappy day and you don't know that. And that word you say to them might just make everything that much better.
Exactly. It's my mother, may she rest in peace. She used to say to me, it's so much easier in the muscles in your face to smile than to frown. It really is. Even though she didn't smile a lot, but no, she wasn't as happy as she could have been, or she should have been, or life was tough for her. But I think it's so much easier just to be like good, just to be nice, just to be nice. Why not? It does affect people. And, I live in Manhattan, right? You walk down the street and I smile and people smile back.
Nice.
They're not smiling, but they smile back because it's just something nice. And then everybody, after when you're smiling, you feel better. And did you know, and I told my kids this in text message to my son, one of the messages I have this, your brain does not know the difference between real laughter and fake laughter. Did you know
Really?
that?
No, I did not
It
know that.
doesn't know the difference. You could sit and fake laugh, and your brain will make all those chemicals of happiness because it doesn't know the difference. So, same thing with happiness, same thing with anything that you can just, even if you're not really feeling it, but you just make yourself laugh, you'll start to feel better because the chemicals inside are reacting to somebody who's having a good time laughing.
Yeah.
So, same dopamine thing. So, there's something to it.
Makes sense. I remember getting called out in the early 90s because I smiled all the time. And they're like, why are you smiling? You shouldn't be smiling right now. It's like, okay. But well, we don't know what you're thinking then. It's like, oh, I'm sorry.
My smiling makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah,
Okay.
it did occasionally. And it was just like, so I quit smiling so much. And then they're like, why aren't you smiling? I'm like, is there a way to win this? Because either I smile too much or I don't smile enough. Make up your mind.
You know
I
what?
think,
You know what I realized, Joanna, though? you can't please all the people all the
Oh
time.
no,
So
no.
you've got to work with those who matter to you,
Yeah.
and then go from there. And just with text messages to my sons, people are buying it and they're saying, you know what, I'm trying this with this person or that. I'm doing it. One person, it's good. It's good.
But
One person is
when
good.
you're in your 20s though, you don't realize that. In your 20s, you're still trying to let's oh, you want to like I want you to like me. In your 50s, you're kind of going, excuse me for saying it, fuck you. I don't give a shit.
I
You
don't
like
care if
me
you
or
like
you
me.
don't. And
I know, I know. It's
that's
I want you to follow me,
yeah,
like.
yeah.
How many likes did I get on this? Yeah.
I don't
A
play
lot
that
of
game.
grown-ups are very hung up on that too.
There was a friend I had, and this happened like a couple of years ago, and her daughter's friend got like she posted a picture of her in a swimsuit and she got like 100,000 likes on the picture. And then like her next picture she posted, she had like maybe 50. And it affected her mood though. She
Yeah, she's
got
a failure in
depressed.
her mind. In her
Yeah.
mind, she's a failure. Yes.
So this brings us to another bit about our devices. It's the dopamine hit of all the like you get and the love, but then what people don't think about is that algorithm has the ability to shut you down just as much as it has to raise you up. So you shouldn't let this affect your mood. Yes, it feels great to have likes. I'm not gonna lie, we all want to be liked, but you also have to come to the conclusion that whether it's TikTok, Instagram, or whatever, they can like you one day, and then the algorithm can hide you the next. But we don't look at that. We think of, oh, this is all reality. They either love me or they don't. But the truth is, I had one video that had like 2,500 hits, and I'm like, okay, this is good. And then they switched the algorithm again, and I'm back down to 250. So it's like, okay, whatever. I'm not gonna sit here and get super excited about it because it's a moment in time, and I think that's really how we have to look at that algorithm. Is they're gonna
Well,
switch that all the time.
it's very true, Joanne. I mean, if you're going to judge your life externally, on external cues, you're not going to be happy.
Mm-mm.
You have to get to the point where your world is inner. Happiness is an inside job. And all we can do is affect people. Like strangers, are strangers. I mean, what a stranger thinks of you, that's basically what social media is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, to me, it's a disaster. I think it's one of the worst things that ever happened to society with social media. But with, like, in this case with text messages to my sons, where there's, you can take it and implement it
Right.
with the people who know you, who love you, and help them. That's it. If strangers buy it and they love it and it helps them with their family, I'm so happy. That's beautiful. But that's the point, right? Just implement in your own circle. Start there. And then you'll find, as you start giving these positive messages, and all the messages and text messages to my sons, even the ones where I'm sharing where I find that I failed in certain ways. Even when you start, it's gonna change your inner dynamic a bit, where you're gonna start saying, hey, you know what? Like, I'm doing this with this person, I'm doing this with my children, I'm doing this with my there are other parts of my family, I'm doing it with my friends. I want to do this more often. I want to do this with other people. I want to do it over here. I want to go to over there and try it out. Like, you see what I'm saying? It's
Mm-hmm.
just start in your inner circle. Start with one person. Just
Right.
start. That's it.
Well, and one of the things I did on TikTok, and as an author, I thought about this. It's like people are like books, and we don't really. You have a choice when you meet somebody in person to look at the cover. You might get a sample of the blurb, so you kind of can get a feel for it. But do you really want to reach between those covers and read the story? Do we really want to know the story? And I think social media, the aspect there, because it is strangers, you don't necessarily have those people wanting to know that full story. But we are very much like books. And I know there's that whole joke of she's an open book, but it's true. We are that way. And when you're talking about your book yourself, it's like I've come to the point where it's like for my books, I write the book that I want to read. I write the book that I want to read. And if you love it, great. And if you don't, that's okay too. But I'm not going to sit here and write something that really isn't what I want. It may be twisted, it may be fun, it may be whatever but I can't sit here and appease everybody. My first book, I had a person write, I don't understand what I read. Okay, well, that's the book wasn't for you. She still gave me 3 stars, but the book wasn't for you, and it's okay. I didn't take offense to it, and that's all right. But you have, as a writer, as a creative person, as even a regular person, you have to come at this as, I'm not going to please everybody. I can
Right.
only please myself and the people that I care about. And even then, I still can't please them. They have to please themselves.
Well, it's interesting because what you're saying is very, very spot on. Text message to my sons, I wrote for my sons.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, it's not easy writing a book. It's a lot
Mm-mm.
of work. There's so many elements, there's so many parts that go in. And yes, the cover matters because believe it or not, 60% of books are bought on the front and back cover.
Mm-hmm.
More than what's going on inside. They figure that out afterwards. That's why I wanted the text message. The designer was amazing, and she has a snappy color, and it's a text. People are like, oh, I know it's a text message. I get it, but you know, for me, I didn't write it for anybody except my sons, and for me, my thing with them, and with the hope that it would help other people who want to figure out how to connect deeply with somebody else. And I'll be honest with you, once some of the events that started happening on October 7th and since then, and you see all this hatred going around and all this excitement that's really on devices, that's really on college campuses, that's been going on for a long time. The rewriting of history, revisionist thinking, indoctrination. I said, I understand why I was compelled to get this done. It's past me and my sons. We really need to start messaging light out there to people.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only way to fight evil. It's the
Mm-hmm.
only way to fight hatred. It's the only way to fight indoctrination because it's really bad what's going on. And I'm a firm believer in that. And so I feel like if we start in our own backyards and it goes out and out, I'm older than you actually, Duana, but
Okay.
remember that commercial and they'll tell 2 friends
Oh
and
yeah.
so on and so on
Yeah.
and so on and so
The
on. It's
shampoo
spread it out,
commercial. Yeah.
right? The shampoo,
Yeah.
herbal essence. That was a
Yes.
great. That was a great commercial.
Great
But
shampoo.
that's what yeah, right. That's what I'm thinking. Like you start in your backyard, and it'll spread. It'll
Mm-hmm.
spread. Just like when you want to become more of a giving person, you just start by serving one person,
Mm-hmm.
serving them first, and then before you know it, you start serving other people first, and it'll
Mm-hmm.
just keep spreading. So that's the point. That's what text messages my son's all about. Yes, it was about me and my kids, but now I'm hoping that other people say, I want to look at this book, I want to read text messages to my sons, and I want to start doing that with my loved ones. Start there.
And I mean, something you're touching on about what's out there and what's happening in the world. It's like people don't realize that, history does repeat itself. We know this for a fact, but yet we try to deny it and we try to change history, as you were saying. And so the propaganda machine is out there. And I often go back to a movie called Wag the Dog with Dustin Hoffman. And it was about the creation of how things can be spun that aren't real. But
Right.
yeah, and I mean, with social media, and I hate to say it now, with AI, we can generate whatever the hell we want and we can make it true, even if it's not true.
Right.
And that's
Very
that's
dangerous.
scary.
Very dangerous. Mhm.
And of course, then you have to go also. Did you not watch Terminator? Did you not watch
I know,
Terminator?
right? Well, there's the Matrix, which is the documentary.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
Terminator, which is actually
I mean,
happening.
honestly, when I
Yeah.
watched when I watched The Matrix the first time, I remember sitting there afterwards going, "Wait a second. So is this real where I'm at, or is this just my mind?" I mean, because it was just one of those mind altering things that made you stop for a moment and think. If you
Uh-huh.
took the gun violence out of it and you just thought about what was going on, it made you think. It was like, well, how do we know that this is reality?
Exactly. And or we're not in there's several alternate realities and we're
Yeah,
just walking through one when there could be 20 others right by us, that
there
we don't even realize is there.
there could be 20 versions of us going through a different thing at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like you have to look at when I had a neuroscientist on here and we talked about the connection of all of us and how we are all interconnected. but people don't see that. And it's like, if you really push an agenda for something, it's only going to affect all of us. So as you raise the hatred level, you're going to have the pushback. You're going to have people that are going to suffer. But why are we doing this? Why do we have to have power? Why do we have to have greed? It doesn't, those things I look at, and yes, call me innocent, but power and greed get nothing. It's not going to bring us peace.
No, it's not, absolutely not. But it's okay. Ancient times, they worshipped
Mm-hmm.
idols. You're
Mm-hmm.
like, why would you worship an idol? Like it's wood, it's not alive. Like they worshipped it, they would kill over it. So
Mm-hmm.
now money and power are idols.
Right.
People will
Well,
kill over it. It's sexy. But you really are, like, you sell your soul, you do your soul contracts and you get what you want. You get what you crave. But is it good for you? Probably not. I know people who have nothing, and I know it sounds so cliche, but they're happy people. You don't, because it's like we saying before, happiness is an inside job.
mm-hmm.
It's what you tell yourself. It's what you believe on the inside. And how strong is your inner world? How strong are those? I don't know. How good are your thoughts in your head? Because that's what's really ruling everything.
Of course. And I mean, you can bring people don't understand manifestation. If you're sitting there manifesting fear and worry constantly, it's going to be that. When
You're
certain
going to
people,
attract it. Yeah.
right.
100%.
When certain people were running for office, I will not name names. There was because I live in a smaller town and they lean to a certain way. And there was a lot of signage for this person. And all I could think of is this man has a golden toilet. You think he's going to understand the life of somebody who's middle class or poor? And I would ask them that, and they're like, "Oh, well, he will know this." And I'm like, "Okay," because
But
it
it's
doesn't.
funny because at the end of the day, he understood it better than the other side does, because that's who basically benefited. So you can't tell. You
No,
can't tell. I can't tell by people how they're going to be or how they're going to wind up being. You try to read the situations as best you can.
but I think
But I don't know. I just look at it like if you're okay, if you're good with yourself, and you're loved, and you know that you have support, as far as you have a good foundation around you, and you know that you have a purpose, and you have connections with people that are real, you're already bulletproof from anything out there. You're not going to be tricked. You're not going to be any of this stuff. You're not going to be taken in, because you have this steady foundation. It's those who don't have the steady foundation, I think, that are more susceptible. But when you look at the rates of depression that are out there, and you look at how people are really terribly depressed now, most of it is, they say, is because they don't have a purpose. They don't feel they have a purpose. They don't feel that connected to anything. They don't have a sense of belonging. They don't have a sense of belonging. So that's why, I felt very compelled also with text messages to my sons to get it out, because those three things: belonging, connection, self-worth, love, all those things, your purpose. What is your purpose? Why are you here? It doesn't have to be a huge reason why you're here, but you have to have a purpose. So those are the kind of messages that I wanted to share with my sons, and that I'm hoping other people will tap into and say, yeah, let's talk more about that. Let's talk about positive connecting and purpose, and let's talk about belonging. Let's not talk about all the other crap that's out there, because it's not important.
well,
It doesn't matter.
the one thing I was going to say, going back to a little bit what we're talking about. I mean, when corporations became people, you look at this, they're not people, they're entities. They control a lot of things. And the reason I went there is because when you look at the job world in the 80s and the 90s, the early 90s, you still had companies that were like, "Oh, it's Christmas, we have a bonus for you, we're going to give you a ham, we're going to give you a turkey, we're going to do this for you, we're treating you as, dare I say, family. You matter to us. We want you to excel. We want to see you thrive. You're part of this. We're a unit." And now you're a freaking cog on the wheel. You're a hamster on a wheel. You have no purpose. Guess what? We're eliminating your job. We're automating now, or we're sending it overseas. You don't matter. And I mean, you're talking about old commercials. Look for the union label. You remember that ad that was all proud about look for the union label. We're going to make sure that everything is made here in the United States, USA. Walmart was all about the USA. And then when Sam Walton died, and then
Yeah.
everything started getting shipped. And this is going to sound really bad. And I've owned this and I will own it to, I voted for Ross Perot. I did because that crazy man said that if we signed the NAFTA agreement, we were going to screw ourselves.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
That's
I remember. I
exactly what
remember.
we did.
I
That's
remember
ex-
Ross.
that's exactly what we did, though. We signed those agreements, and then jobs started going away.
Yeah, my father was a domestic sweater manufacturer. You know, his people threw the union out, which was unheard of because he treated them so well. He treated them
Wow.
so well.
Yeah.
And you know what? God bless, but he lost his business because he couldn't compete against China, the slave
Yeah.
labor and whatever they were doing over there. He paid his people really well. He cared. He used to go pick them up and bring them to work. He made sure, like he did things like he was a completely different, he
See,
was one
that's
of those guys you're talking about. And this is the
yeah,
80s and the 90s.
yeah.
Yeah. And the 70s. But you know what? Like I don't know, I hope that that people have a better, situation
Mhm.
at their jobs, in their lives. I really do. I also noticed that, I know a lot of people who are in their side hustles, who are running their own businesses, and they can't find help that's not feeling entitled or not giving them
No,
a hard time or not, like a lot of things have shifted and changed. Is the cat out of the bag? I don't know. I hope not. I hope not.
I don't
I
know.
know, I know with my kids, they work hard. They know they have to work hard. They know they have to pay their bills. They know I'm not going to be able to pay their stuff. And they
Well,
have to be responsible. And I think that's what we have to do. We have to take our kids and we have to be not entitle them, not tell them they should get an award because they exist. But I do say tell them they have worth. Tell them they are, tell them the right messages and show them the right things and be good role models for them. And do it with your neighbors and do it with your community too.
there's a way to instill inspiration and not think that, okay, well, guess what? You don't have to do anything. Just go on Instagram and become an influencer and you got it made.
Right.
I mean, that's the
Don't
problem.
put on your bathing suit. Put that
Yeah.
bikini on and take a couple of pictures, babe. That's what you need to do.
And go to fans only or whatever. And then, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
Sugar daddies. Yeah.
yeah, I just, what are you doing to yourself? Granted, I guess fake it till you make it for a certain amount of time, but
Listen, you need to be on TikTok with your kid, like dancing with them, wearing no clothes. Like,
no,
what are you telling your kid? Like, I
yeah,
get the same thing. Like, I don't get it.
it doesn't make sense now for me to judge, but it's like you don't under everybody is trying to do something and be something. And it goes back to Andy Warhol saying, everybody wants to be famous for 15 minutes. And here we are. We have arrived at that for sure.
Oh yeah, and now you can.
Yeah. Now you can be.
Devices.
Yeah.
You
And
can meet a lot of people. Yep.
I look back at Space Mountain in Disney World when it first came about. You took the ride, and at the very end of the ride, there was this RCA, I think, presents, and they had all these things that for the future. And I look back because part of it was the flat screen TV, part of it was the phone, part of it was having these kind of conversations with you and me, like we're doing right now.
Holograms. Remember the
Yeah,
hologram?
yeah. And I mean, these are the things where it's like you look back and you go, we have achieved this. And it's only, Elon Musk wants to implant something in you. I'm like, no, I will not go there. I will not go there. I don't care what kind of technology, I will not go there. But the younger generations, they're open to tech. They want all this. They want it all. But you know what? I actually liked not having tech so much because it was fun. I love it for research. I love it to writing. It makes my life a lot easier. But there's a lot of other things we could get away with and not worry about.
Oh yeah, 100%. But you know what? That's one of the things I love about the book, Text Message to My Sons, is that it's simple. They're just written messages
Mhm.
that I use a device. I use technology to get a simple written message out. It's not, it's not glamour. It's not
Right.
video. It's not filtered. It's not me doing whatever. It's just a message to my kids in the day. That's it. It's very simple.
You mean it's kind of reality without the filter? I mean, that's the one thing, that you look on Instagram, how many people are filtering themselves.
Yeah.
So But
Or
the thing,
showing a life that's really like this, my life is amazing, and their life's not amazing. And
no,
then other people are like, oh, my life's not amazing, I must be worthless.
I mean, I remember getting a headshot and the guy's like, well, do you want me to Photoshop you? I'm like, I've never been Photoshopped. So he's like, well, I'll Photoshop one picture a little bit and then I'll Photoshop one hardcore. I'm like, okay. So I look at the one that's really hardcore Photoshop and I'm like, I look plastic. It's like, and then if I meet somebody, whether it be the podcast or doing a book signing or just talking to somebody, they're gonna look at me and look at that picture and go, what the hell happened?
It
And nobody thinks about that. They're just like, oh well,
sounds like dating apps, no?
yeah, no, I avoid those things like the plague. I mean, yeah, I guess I should get on them, but I avoid those things like the plague because I get hit on enough on Facebook. So yeah. Mm-mm, mm-mm. Anyway, now that we've digressed there, so is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, no, just that text messages to my sons is available on Amazon. And please, if you like it, if you buy it and you like it, please let me know, and share with me and review it. I'm really open to what people think and say, and I hope it has a positive effect on everyone.
And as an author, I will say this: reviews are great. We love reviews because it lets people know what's in the book, that you've enjoyed the book, and that, hey, you might want to pick the book up. So I thank you very much for coming on.
Joanna, I thank you for having me. This was a really great conversation. I enjoyed talking to you, and we could definitely be friends because this is great. So thank
You're
you.
welcome. Tammy and I had a very interesting conversation. You know, when we talk about text messages, it has evolved. It has evolved from when it first started, and we are understanding a little bit more when somebody is joking sometimes. But it's been an evolution, and that's the thing when you think about life. We're always evolving. We're always going through changes, and we're always looking at different things and different aspects. And I know we touched about history, but evolution is history, is it not? But we have to realize that sometimes we have to go back. We have to re-examine where we're coming from. And that may even be looking at who we are as a person. You know, as she was just talking about her text messages, she started explaining to her sons her behavior. And I think that's a gift when we can look to our children and sit there and say, well, this is why I did what I did, especially if we can go back years from now and they have a better understanding. It's a gift because, quite honestly, when you don't have that gift and you don't have that open communication with your parents, you don't know why they did what they did. You just have to assume. You have to unpack a story that makes sense in your head as to what you know about your grandparents who were different, as we talked about on the show, and how they raised your parents. They were not the same people that you knew. They were different. They were younger. They were more impetuous, possibly, more dynamic, more controlling. But we don't know those things. We only know what they will tell us. So it's up to us to really look at their behavior in order for us to heal and grow. And by healing and growing, we can then look at healing our relationships with our children, with the people that are in our lives. And as she said, if we are more positive to just our inner circle and then sending that out to our community and then growing it more and combating against the negative. And I'm not saying everything has to be love and light and all positivity because there are tragedies in this world every day that we can't just erase. We have to face them. But if we have the opportunity to do something, then we need to. We need to be aware that we have the ability and capability to do it. So if you love somebody and you don't know what to say, why not say hi and just a little heart, just to know that, let them know that you're thinking of them. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the podcast today. As always, the sound is done by Rich Zai of Third Year Audio. And we are making changes. As you can see behind me, there's a new logo, and we're just changing things up a little bit. Season 7, and I know you should have done it at the beginning of season 7, but sometimes you just decide to flip the script in the middle of the show. Why not? Anyway, take care, guys. I hope to catch you next time. And yeah, whenever you're listening, enjoy. So I'll catch you next time, guys. Bye. The Better 2 podcast is mixed, edited, and produced by Rich Zai of Third Year Audio Productions.